Real Rhinelander podcast is sponsored by AirPro Fan and Blower Company. For more information, visit airprofan.com. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Real Rhinelander podcast. My name is Lauren Sackett. I'm the CEO of the Rhinelander Chamber, and this month's guest is Kerry Bloedorn.
Happy to be here, Lauren.
Welcome. I'm excited to have this conversation with you. I think that so many times people have heard from you, but I think it'll be great to have a different type of conversation maybe than we have. So before we dive into some questions, I really like to ask people to give us in their own words, like who they are, their background, how they ended up in Rhinelander, all that kind of stuff. So take it away.
Okay. Kerry Bloedorn, and shucks, where to even begin? I've lived in Rhinelander for, I want to say, coming up on 20 years. Time flies when you're having fun, they say.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother and great-grandmother were born and raised, spent their whole lives here in Rhinelander. And I didn't always know the details of that until maybe the last couple of decades. So when I first moved up here, I hadn't really considered that. But in the long term, as I've learned more about my family's history, it was kind of neat to see that it was somewhat of a homecoming, if you will, back to some roots that I didn't know that I had, grown in my family tree. So that was really cool. But ultimately, I had met a beautiful born and raised Hodag, my wife, Cecilia, and that prompted me to move up here. And I was born an Air Force brat in Minot, North Dakota. And so I moved around a lot growing up. And being the new kid at a different school is really a challenging thing. I think that sometimes when people live in the same place their whole lives, they tend to feel like that's a bit boring, or they want to go explore different places. And on the contrary, if you move around and you end up having to make new friends all the time and go to new schools all the time, you feel like you wish you could just be somewhere, and not have to do that all the time. So when I moved up to Rhinelander and started to fall in love with the Rhinelander community, my heart has really just established itself here, and we've raised our family here. And I think it's a wonderful place to work, live, and play. And I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. So I'm happy to be here today. And certainly a lot of doors and opportunities have opened up for me in Rhinelander.
So I know you've said before, you kind of said that you used to be a Anago Red Robin.
Yeah, I did go to high school in Anago. At a certain juncture, I had moved back to Anago, where my parents are originally from. But I, again, married Cecilia and moved up to Rhinelander and have hopefully been adopted thusly into Hodag.
I think that Rhinelander has claimed you as a Hodag.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to be a card carrying Hodag these days.
So can you talk a little bit about like your professional, obviously you're the curator of the Pioneer Park Historical Complex, director of the museum there. But if you could share a little bit of your background and then some of the other activities and things you're involved in too.
When I first moved up to Rhinelander, I'd been working in-home private health care, and that afforded me the opportunity to meet some Rhinelander old-timers and get to know the community in a way that I wouldn't have otherwise been able to. People that were really ingrained in Rhinelander's history, that were able to share their stories and their knowledge with me. And that really helped endear me to Rhinelander in the early years that I had spent up here. And I've always loved history. I've always been into American history and Wisconsin history and Northwoods history my whole life. And at a certain point in time, I saw an advertisement that the city of Rhinelander was looking for a new director at Pioneer Park Historical Complex, which I had visited many times over the years. And growing up, I'd spent my childhood coming up here to visit family on occasion. So I was familiar with Rhinelander and its proverbial logging museum. So I gave that an opportunity, and I had worked with the former director, April Roski, for the summer. And this was in 2018. And I loved it. I thought it was an amazing job. It was a great opportunity for me to learn more about the Rhinelander community and its history and its heritage. And once that door opened, I just kicked it wide open and went full tilt. And then once you start learning about Northwoods history, and in particular Rhinelander history, it's just something that I've grown to become really passionate about.
Mhm.
And it's been great. I'm thankful that that I took that first step. I was thankful that April took a chance on me, and yeah, it's been wonderful.
So what is that, like 7 years
I
already?
think
8?
yeah, 7 or 8. I can't remember if this is my 7th or 8th season. I don't know who's counting. But since then, I've learned a lot about Pioneer Park Historical Complex and the logging museum's history. I've written what I think is the most comprehensive historical document about the logging museum and the complex as it stands. And that gave me an opportunity to really dig into all of the details and the facets. And an article was published in the New North magazine when I was writing for that publication for a couple of years. And it's still available online if you want to learn more about PPHC.
Mhm.
But it was really neat to see how that museum was founded and how far it's come this year. It's 94 years old, the oldest logging museum in the nation.
Hmm.
And I've become very proud of just my short tenure there at the museum. And I take it very seriously,
Mhm.
knowing that I stand on the shoulders of hundreds of people that have come before me, preserving that museum, and that I play a role in moving it into the future.
Yeah, that's very cool. So, Pioneer Park Historical Complex is like 7 museums in one, right? Could
Yes.
you just, if someone isn't familiar with it, just a little overview of the museum complex?
Yeah, I call it a village of
Mhm.
museums. You know, when you walk into the complex, there's a number of different buildings that you see. They're all interconnected but unique. So there is a antique sawmill museum, which features an antique sawmill setup that was owned by the Marquardt family for many years, and that had been moved around between Enterprise, Wisconsin, and Stella, Wisconsin, before landing at PPHC in 2009. And there's a one-room schoolhouse museum that started its spot down there at the park in 1975. That was once an authentic one room schoolhouse, staffed all by retired teachers. We have a Civilian Conservation Corps Museum, the state of Wisconsin CCC Museum. The CCC is a national program, a federal program. And so when you visit state or national parks all over the country, you'll oftentimes see small CCC displays talking about their impact on, you know, whatever place you're visiting. I've never seen a pretty comprehensive CCC museum like we have right here in Rhinelander, Wisconsin, which covers 128 camps spread across the entire state. So we get visitors from all over the state, all over the country that want to learn about CCC history.
Mhm.
And I think that's really one of the hidden gems of the complex that not many locals are as familiar with.
Mhm.
It's interesting when you can have something in your community that draws people from all over the place, that locals just maybe aren't quite as knowledgeable about as they could be. So if you
Yeah.
haven't checked it out, it's a good place to come and learn about the CCC's history and its impact on the Northwoods of Wisconsin, especially.
Mhm.
And then we have an antique fire barn, which has some old Rhinelander firefighting equipment, old trucks, firefighting wagon. There's also a wonderful Bells of St. Mary's display in that building. And if you're from the Rhinelander area or have lived here for any duration of time, you've probably heard about the Bells of St. Mary, which was the goodwill ambassadors of Rhinelander. They like to say a group from the 60s and 70s, made up of young ladies. And they were a drum and bugle corps. They went all over the state, all over the country performing, and they're very highly regarded in Rhinelander's history.
Hmm.
And then we have Duke's Outboard Motor and Boat Museum, which features one of the largest collections of antique outboard boat motors in the state of Wisconsin. And Wisconsin has a very long, rich history in boat manufacturing and outboard motor manufacturing, with Mercury and Johnson and Evinrude and all these great motors that have, you know, plied the waters of the Northwoods of Wisconsin. Oneida County has 1,129 lakes. That's a little factoid I like to throw around a lot. And so it's given our history an opportunity to, you know, have a connection with these boat motors and these boats. Just about every Northwoods community at one time had a boat manufacturing company. There was a Rhinelander boat company here in town that made boats for many decades. So we have some of those things on display. And all of that is curated by Jim Montgomery, who is the son of Duke Montgomery, whose name is like gold when it comes to boat motor repairs. If you've had to have a boat motor fixed in the last 80 years or so in Rhinelander, you probably have been out to Duke's Outboard Shop out on Boom Lake, in Duke's Bay, of course. And so it's really cool to have him continuing on his father's tradition and taking care of all those boat motors. It's another really cool part of the museum where people come in and um, if you're not familiar with boat motors, you might walk in there and think, oh, wow, this is neat. There's a lot of boat motors here. But if you're really into boat motors, you realize the amazing collection that's in there. I mean, some extremely rare outboard boat motors that really make it a worthwhile stop for aficionados of boats and boat motor history. And then, of course, the Logging Museum, which is the Anchor Museum, 94 years old this summer. I'm really going to strive hard to be around for its 100th year. 6 years will fly by, I think,
Yeah.
just like the last 6 years has. And I'm really excited to celebrate that part of Rhinelander's history. And again, just being this fabulous, it's one of the most complete collections of mid to late 1800s logging artifacts, photographs, equipment. We have some pieces that you can't find anywhere else in the world. And it's a really important part of Northwoods, Wisconsin heritage and history. It's a really important part of Rhinelander's history. And it's great to have it. A lot of people tend to think that the museum, as it stands as a complex, is a Rhinelander museum. I think if you grew up here, but it's a little bit of a misconception. The truth is that it's a regional museum.
Mhm.
So there's history that is Rhinelander centric at the museum, but it has a lot of artifacts and photos and documents and equipment and all sorts of things that cover a wide area, not just Rhinelander, but the entire Northwoods and the entire state of Wisconsin. And that
Mhm.
goes for all of the museums at the complex. And then finally, we have a railroad museum, which is housed in a authentic Sioux Line Railroad station that was at one time down in Rhinelander's Hollow, which is an area of town that old timers will be familiar with.
Mhm.
And that was moved up to PPHC in the 90s. And there's been a train on display there for many years, which harkens back to its logging days here in Rhinelander with the Thunder Lake Lumber Company and the Robbins Railroad. And all of it combined makes just for a must stop place, not just in Rhinelander, but all of the Northwoods. We have one of those maps at the museum where you can stick a pin in where you're from. And I'm always surprised that locals come out every summer. It's like a place we gotta go to. Or if you have relatives or friends from out of the area come to town, it's just you gotta take them down to PPHC. And last year alone, last summer, we had pins stuck in 38 different states and 18 different countries that come from all over the country, all over the world to visit Rhinelander, Wisconsin.
Mhm.
I think it's one of those interesting things that when you grow up in a particular place, you can take things for granted a little bit.
Yeah.
But to recognize and realize that Rhinelander is a destination, and I
Mhm.
know you guys working at the chamber see that all the time.
Yeah.
But I really want to inspire locals to recognize that Rhinelander is a magical place for thousands of people.
Yeah.
Rhinelander is God's country. It is a wonderful, magical place that people look forward to visiting,
Mhm.
that seek out to come and visit it. And when you can be an ambassador for your community, oftentimes people that come into the complex, it might be their first experience in Wisconsin.
Mhm.
It might be their first experience in the United States.
Mhm.
So to be one of those faces that people sees, and you can talk to them about, why you love your community, why you love Rhinelander, why you love the Northwoods of Wisconsin, and share that with them. It just makes it really special when you can play that role.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, we had almost all 50 states sign in here at the visitor center last year, which is really cool to see. Like you don't think really what that there is a lot of travel, but there is a lot of travel that happens.
Absolutely. And when you get to live it every day, again,
Mhm.
it's just one of those things that, when you commute through the beautiful North Woods, you see the trees and the lakes and, but it is a very unique, special place. And just like you would travel to the desert or to the mountains or to the ocean, people also travel to the great North Woods of Wisconsin. And
Mhm.
it is equally as important. The biggest question we get from people that come into the museum that have never been to Wisconsin or to the United States, they'll ask me, oh, where are all the cows at?
Mhm.
I think a lot of people tend to think that Wisconsin is a giant cow pasture, and we don't really have many cows up here in the Northwoods these days. We used to many decades ago when there was a
Yeah.
lot more agriculture. But what we have is glacial lakes and pine forests as far as the eye can see, and of
Mhm.
course, hodags.
And a lot of potatoes.
We
We do
do.
have a lot of potatoes.
Yeah, the same sandy silt loam that allows for the growing of pine forests and pine trees also is pretty good soil for growing potatoes
Yep.
after all. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we heard a little bit about the museum, but you have a lot of different like volunteer roles and things that you're involved in. Can you talk a little bit about some of those too?
Sure. And honestly, I could spend like a few hours just waxing poetic about the museum. This was scratching the surface. So come in and visit this summer, and we can talk more about
Yeah.
Pioneer Park Historical Complex. But over the years, I have been involved in quite a few things. I had spent some time around the COVID area working the polls for our local township. I could touch on that just briefly too.
Mhm.
I don't live in the city limits. I live in the town of Pelican, and I tend to see the Rhinelander community as the the greater Rhinelander area, if you
Mhm.
will. Even though I live in the town of Pelican, my address on my mail when it comes to my house says Rhinelander, Wisconsin.
Yep.
And I tend to think of that as being the overarching community. And even though I don't pay property taxes in the city of Rhinelander, certainly I do all of my shopping here, do work here, do a lot of playing here. And so I like to encourage people to recognize that, Rhinelander is a lot bigger than just the city limits.
Yeah.
It's a bigger community than that, and it's awesome to be a part of it and to work together for the betterment of everybody that lives in the immediate area.
Mhm.
So that's really cool.
Yeah. So you've worked polls.
Worked polls. Um, I want to say in 2018 or 19, I think it was the year after I started at the museum. Um, I had watched the Oneida County Fair take place in Pioneer Park, and I thought this is great. My grandfather was the president and entertainment chair of the Langley County Fair down in
Mm.
Anago for 35 or 40 years. And so I had grown up going to the Langley County Fair in Anago and had fond memories of the fair. And from the museum, watching the Oneida County Fair happen in the park, I thought, this is wonderful. This is really awesome. I'd like to be a part of this. So I joined the fair board and eventually became the vice president. And not currently, I'm the sitting president of the Oneida County Fair. And it's a wonderful group of volunteer board members that work really hard all year long to put on what I call one of the best little county fairs in the state of Wisconsin. It's one of the few fairs in the state that doesn't have its own permanent fairgrounds. Certainly, we turn Pioneer Park out into a great little fair. But I always tease that when you watch a movie on Lifetime or like a romantic comedy on TV, where like the big city lawyer goes back home to the small town and meets the farmer's daughter and they fall in love and that sort of thing. When they go on their first date, it's not to the state fair, it's to the Oneida County Fair. And that's
Yeah.
what it reminds me of, this quaint little fair amongst the beautiful pine trees at Pioneer Park. And it does have a lot to offer. Certainly, we live in an area of Wisconsin that doesn't have a very robust agricultural community, and typically county fairs subsist on their ag communities, their big 4-H groups, and things like that. But where we lack in those departments, we make up for it in other areas. And I sometimes hear a critique that, oh, we don't have big cattle barns and a big animal ag presence at our county fair, but pigs do not a county fair make.
Mhm.
And so we provide all of the other things you would think of at a county fair, the cheese curds, the cotton candy, the live music, the carnival. We do have a great petting farm that comes in from Blue Mound family owned farm. So we do have animals there. But the little old fashioned contests, the sack races, the cheese curd eating contests, and all of those things
Mhm.
that make a great county fair, we do a really wonderful job at all of it. And couldn't do it without, again, all of these wonderful volunteers that sit on the board, countless individual volunteers that come and help out during the fair, all of the wonderful businesses in Oneida County that support this endeavor. Our goal is to put on a great little fair and give families and children, especially, an opportunity to come down for a fun, family friendly time and affordable.
Mhm.
Truth be told, we don't live in one of the most wealthy areas of the country. And so it's important to me, and growing up with not a lot of means, to give families an opportunity to come down and pet some animals and do a carnival ride and be a part of a watermelon eating contest and see some live music, and pay as little as they can to do that,
Mhm.
so that everybody gets those shared experiences, because little fairs are where memories are made for a lifetime.
Mhm.
And I remember those things growing up, and it's really important to me to give children again and families an opportunity to do that. And I thought that way even before I had my own child. Now that I have a 6-year-old, even more so. He just loves the fair, and seeing it all through his eyes reinvigorates my passion to be involved in the Oneida County Fair. So yeah, that's another thing I
Yeah.
like to do.
Oh my gosh, I'm sure there's so much more, Kerry.
I
You're
can really
always
go on about the
doing
fair too. Yeah.
everything. I see you everywhere. Um, I mean, the fair is a big part of our community. Could you share a little bit about maybe how someone could get involved with it? Like, I know financial support is always helpful, but you guys also look for a lot of volunteers to help put the event on too, right?
Yeah, I mean, if I really had to encourage individuals and businesses, to just really take to heart our mission, which is to put on this great annual family-friendly event for children and families to have an affordable opportunity to come and have some fun. It's something that people look forward to, and even though it's not the greatest, grandest fair in the world, it is a really wonderful fair. It's very special. It's very important. So if you want to volunteer during the fair, our volunteer coordinator is always looking to touch base with people. We have monthly meetings, 2 meetings a month, June, July, getting ready for the fair and working pretty much all the time, night and day, just to make all the preparations. But I hope that businesses too, and individuals that want to donate and partner with the fair to help us keep it affordable for families and children. That's a really big aspect of it. So if you believe in that mission and you want to support that cause, and there's so many wonderful causes in the Rhinelander area that work towards similar goals, I encourage you to get involved and make a donation or partner with the fair so that we can keep it around for future years.
Yeah.
And that's just about it. Come to a meeting; they're open to the public. We always have a fun time. Our fair office is at the old current school building, which is an office complex these days. We have a website, ocfairwi.com, where you can find all the information, or just flag me down. If you see me around town, I'm always happy to talk about it and invite you and point you in the right direction.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, so aside from those things, people also probably see you on like WJFW or maybe hear your voice on WXPR sometimes. Can you talk a little bit about like how your love for history has kind of translated and been able to be brought to a broader audience over the last few years?
Yeah, I think it really boils down to just doing what I love, and then doors kind of crack open that I peek inside. And if I like it, then I walk through them and always with the fullest of my heart. And one thing, I want to say 10 or 12, maybe it was even long, 15 years ago, um, I had a really life changing experience befriending Cedric and Marvel Vig. And if you've been around the Rhinelander community a long time, you know the name Ced Vig. He was a school superintendent for many years. He retired in 1977. So I knew him toward the end of his life. But he was one of these just golden people. I've never heard anybody say anything bad about Sedvig. And the whole time I spent with him for many years, being his friend and visiting with him, he never said anything bad about anybody. And just one little a note about Sedvig quick. He had this calendar, and on the calendar, every day was full of names and phone numbers. And the first thing he did every day was he went to that calendar and called every number and said happy birthday to that person. It was a birthday calendar.
Yeah.
And this consisted of hundreds of people. And he spent his whole life doing that. And he was a note writer. So he would write just simple thank you notes to everybody. And you're hard pressed to find anybody that didn't have a connection with Sedvig that hadn't received one of those notes. And when you get a Sedvig note, it's something that you cherish.
Mm.
And one thing that he was just a great guy. I can't say enough about that. And everybody will agree with me. He was one of those kind of people that just made you feel heard, and like he touched your life.
Mhm.
And not just one or two people, but hundreds of people throughout his career. But one thing he told me was that knowledge doesn't become wisdom until it's shared. And I think about all the people that have stories or knowledge or information that just don't share it. They don't tell people about it. And it's great if you're smart, but I want my knowledge to become wisdom.
Mhm.
And so I've endeavored to share everything that I learn. It's not well enough to just take the information in and learn about it so that it serves me. It's important to me to share that with as many people as want to listen. And so, with that in mind, I've become very passionate about not just learning about history of Rhinelander and the Northwoods of Wisconsin, but then in turn sharing that with people that
Mhm.
want to know about it. So I think it was during COVID. We didn't have an Oneida County Fair that year, and we were trying to think about ways to reach the community at large. And it really turned into an online presence.
Mhm.
And we had done these scavenger hunts around Oneida County. I had put together a series of history videos,
Mhm.
and they were really well received. Um, we went all over Oneida County. I had a lot of help from my good friend Ben Burnell, who owns the Hodag store, and together we were able to put these history videos together, get them out online, and people just loved them
Mhm.
and thought they were really awesome. They're still on YouTube to this day, and it was a great experience for me in taking history, learning about history, talking with so many people that had knowledge to share, and then writing a script and putting it into a form that then I could share with people on a video. And then, I don't know, a few years later, Jeff Weller at the TV station said, "Hey, Kerry, why don't you come do the history video thing at the TV station?" And I was a little apprehensive. I wasn't sure if I wanted to dive in too quickly. But then after a couple of years of Jeff really keeping on me and being like, "Hey, this would be great on Channel 12. Why don't you come in and give it a shot?" And so I started doing a monthly history program called Connecting the Dots, Reliving Northwoods History. And I think I'm pretty close to my 50th episode
Mm.
now, and almost, I think, over 4 years, maybe 5 years.
Yeah.
Um, and I've absolutely loved it. It's been a great opportunity, a great experience, seeing what everything that's involved in our little TV station. Um, I've really come to appreciate Channel 12. WJFW is something you grow up with around here, and it's really important to have that type of news outlet in your community. I
Mhm.
think sometimes people take it for granted,
Yeah.
but not every little town has a TV station of their own.
Yeah.
And ours goes back to the 1960s. So having a platform to share our local history with viewers has become really important to me,
Mhm.
and it's been so much fun. I just love it. I never feel like this is work. And then in doing that, there was a history program on WXPR, the public radio station affiliate here in town, that was hosted by Gary Entz, who was a longtime history teacher, marvelous historian, just generally a great guy. He also has been volunteering at the museum these past couple of years in the CCC museum. But he had hosted this program called A Northwoods Moment in History, and he had done that for quite a while, hundreds of episodes, which then later got turned into a book that you can purchase, A Northwoods Moment in History. And when he decided to hang up the headphones, so to speak, they were looking for somebody else to fill those shoes. And so I got an invitation to host that program, and I thought, yeah, this is something I would do too. And it really gives me a great opportunity because not every history story that I come across um, is tailored for one or the other, TV or the radio. So when I do the television program, I want to find great pictures. I want to find archival footage. The information is always there, and there's always people to talk to and research to be done. But not every history story comes with compelling footage and photos.
Mhm.
And so it's an awesome opportunity for me to differentiate between those types of history stories. If I come across something that I'm really passionate about learning more about and I can't really find a lot of pictures about it, well, this will make a great radio program.
Yeah.
If I find like some archival footage or some pictures about a certain topic, okay, this will make a great TV history program. So it's awesome to have both of those mediums to work with in sharing local history. And sometimes, and maybe you've experienced this with doing the podcast. I think when you first get into sharing, yourself as a person and being the focus of a program, a lot of times it's hard for people to listen to themselves. You know, if you
Mm-hmm.
re-listen to your podcast, or you hear yourself on the radio, or you see yourself on the TV, that goes away,
Yeah.
and you really start to enjoy it and love it. And I always get the biggest kick out of being at Menards, and I'll be talking to the clerk, and somebody will come over from like 2 aisles away, and they'll be like, "Oh, Kerry Bloedorn, I heard you talking, and I
Yeah.
recognize your voice." And I think that's a really special thing, um, that I really appreciate, and getting to know all of the community members. I love it when I'm out in public and people stop me and want to tell me, a history topic that they enjoy, that they like to see on the show.
Mhm.
And that laundry list always gets bigger.
Yeah.
And I always tease when somebody tells me about a history story that they want to hear, I always bump it up on the priority chain, because I have a Word document with just so many different topics that I'd love to cover. And even doing it once a month on both programs, I don't feel like I'll ever get through them all.
No.
So I got to kind of decide, well, what am I going to do? And sometimes I tailor it by the time of year.
Mhm.
Like in the winter time is a good time for snowmobile history, or in the summertime, it's a good time for other types of stories. So having those opportunities has been just a marvelous experience. Having support from the radio station, Jesse Dick and Katie down at the radio station, and all the staff there, and Jeff Weller at the TV station, and Steve Shanks, and the owner, Joe, and just all of the staff down up at the TV station has really been an awesome experience. And I've grown to think very fondly of all of those people and all the
Mhm.
work they do for our community. If I could wax poetic just a couple more minutes about that, it would be that both of those places really focus on our local news.
Yeah.
And it's important for them to share things in our backyard that are important to Northwoods viewers. Getting more involved in the TV station, especially, people will ask me, do you have commands or things that come down the pipeline from some hierarchy? When you watch national news, you get the sense that something's dictating what's going on here. And it is not like that at all at our local
Mhm.
TV station. It's really a grassroots newsroom where the Northwoods and our local news is the focus.
Mhm.
I mean, even when you go on the social media pages, you won't see a lot of the national news stories because you can get that from a lot of different sources. But what you do see is a lot of local stories. And it's important to me to be a part of an organization whose focus is, our local area.
Mhm.
And I think they do a great job. And I think their hearts are all in the right places. News gets a bad rap these days, I think, as being, divisive and divided and that sort of things. And I honestly don't get the sense,
Mhm.
don't get that sense at our little TV station and at our radio station here in town.
A nice segue, if you want, going back and listen to our episode with Jeff Weller, because we do touch on that a little bit about their philosophy at the station and wanting to be that local news source. And it's a really interesting listen. So you can go back and watch that episode too.
Absolutely. Jeff's a good guy. A lot of times people ask me, is Jeff, as funny and happy-go-lucky as he seems on air? And he really is. Sometimes it doesn't
100%.
translate, when you're on TV or when you're off TV, but he's a genuine guy, and he's a great boss, if you will.
Yeah. So one of the things that I was thinking, is there something that specifically motivates you to stay so engaged in the community? Like you are in all of these different places, and you are very engaged as an individual. I think when you look at the broad span of our community, is there something that motivates you to be out there and doing all the things?
Well, I always tease because people do tell me that from time to time. Gary, I see you all over the place. I see you involved in a lot of things. And my knee jerk reaction to that is, I wish I had a cloning machine because I would do more.
Mhm.
I really would. And so if you have connections with scientists that can develop cloning machine, we tease about it all the time. We need clones so that we
Yeah.
can do more and be more involved. And the why really, um, I'd like to harken back to Sedvig again. The guy was just full of wisdom and knowledge. And another thing he used to tell me all the time was, your community is only as good as the work you're willing to put into it. And I decided at a certain point in time, I look around and I see some individuals, and thankfully they're a small number of people, that just like to gripe and complain about everything, and nothing's good enough for them. And I decided I was not going to ever be that person. And I was going to try my hardest to make the community that I live in be a community that I want to live in.
Mhm.
And so if that means getting involved in other, all different aspects of it and trying to be a positive voice in our community, that's what it was going to take, and that's what I was going to do. And then, part of that is sometimes things come up within our community that on a personal level, I might not always agree with everything that's going on, but I decided that I wasn't going to be a griper and a grump, and I wasn't going to staunch progress. And so, if there's something going on in our community, I'm always trying to be a cheerleader for it, no matter what it is. And, anytime somebody steps up to the plate and works toward making our community a better place, I'm going to support that, and I'm going to think positively about it.
Mhm.
I just don't want to be a grump, and hopefully that rubs off on other people
Yeah.
and inspires other people to think maybe, it's not to sugarcoat it, because sometimes people might think that's the other side of that coin. Well, you're always so positive about everything. It dismisses the negative aspects. Every place you can go on this planet has its pros and cons, and its good sides and its bad sides. And certainly we can all have things to work on and do better. But can we do that in a constructive way
Mhm.
that's going to make our community a better place to live in, to raise our families in, to work in, to play in? And I always err on that side of things. And again, I hope it does inspire people into thinking positively and
Mhm.
maybe getting involved in the community in that way.
Yeah, I know one of our previous guests, we talked a little bit about volunteerism and it being an important thing for people to be involved in their communities. I think a lot of times you tend to see a lot of the same faces out doing all of the things. And if you have that opportunity to volunteer in some way, I think it's a very rewarding experience. So,
It really is. I have to say that I'm very fortunate to have a partner in my wife, Cecilia, that also allows me a lot of opportunity to get out and do things. And she also, in turn, is also very involved in the community, sometimes more behind the scenes than I am, just by her nature of her personality. But I couldn't do it without, the partnership with her. And not everybody has that. Um, so many times I hear about, well, why is there volunteer shortage for this or for that? And I've spent so much time, and I know you have too, trying to pinpoint, how do you get more people involved and engaged in your community? For starters, it's a long game. Like,
mhm,
it just doesn't happen overnight. You have to put in the work and inspire people. And, those little seeds are planted every day.
yeah.
And sometimes they take a long time to grow. But you look at Rhinelander's past, specifically, and all of the different civic groups that there used to be. We still have some of those civic groups today, the Rotary Club, the
Mhm,
Lions Club, places like that. But we used to have a Knights of Columbus, and the Kiwanis is still active.
mhm,
And there were a lot more civic organizations back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and they've slowly dwindled over time. And it's my personal opinion that in order to be a volunteer and be involved in your community, you have to have expendable income and expendable time.
mhm,
And societally, for whatever reason, um, it's easy to take note of the reason, but it's a lot harder to fix it.
yeah.
Those things are in short supply these days. So many people have dual incomes, and both parents working out of the home, and childcare and housing costs are always on the rise. So I think it gets harder to find that time
Mhm,
to invest in your community in the ways that people would like to.
yeah.
But even with all that said, I always encourage people, even if it's just 1 hour a month. There's so many great causes, from our homeless shelter to the food pantry to the fair to all of the events the chamber puts on, to fundraising efforts for splash pads and playground equipment, and you name it. There's things you can get involved in that don't take up a ton of time, that you can do. And just a little bit of time goes a long way. And I hope
Yeah.
people take advantage of that.
That totally gives me the opportunity for another shameless plug, Carrie. On the Chamber's website, we have a volunteer opportunity tab. where we have nonprofits that submit their volunteer opportunities to a calendar. So if you're able to go on and check that out, there's also like an ongoing list of nonprofits that might need some help on an ongoing basis. Maybe they're looking for board members, but that volunteer page on our website is a great resource if you're looking to, an hour or get more involved. Great opportunity to check that out.
I think organizations facilitating easy ways to volunteer and to get involved is key.
Mhm.
And that should be an awesome portal for people, because sometimes you don't know
Mhm.
what's out there, who's looking for help. And it reminds me that I got to get some information on there for a couple of organizations that I'm involved in too.
Yeah, awesome. So let me just see, what other kind of questions might I have here for you? We've talked about a little bit about you and some of the organizations that you represent. Is there like a fun fact or something that people don't know?
I mean, I feel like I'm a kind of a heart on my sleeve kind of guy. Things that I enjoy to do, I usually like to talk about. Um, I really love to be outside. I really love the Northwoods, and we have so many opportunities for hiking around the forest, jumping in a lake. It seems like such a simple thing, but we live in lakes country.
Mhm.
And if it's summertime and you're not jumping in a lake once a week, you're doing it wrong up here in these Northwoods. You just have to do it. And we have some great, not everybody can afford the opportunity to live on a lake with as many as there are. I don't live on a lake. I don't have any beach frontage to
Mm.
speak of, but thankfully we have awesome public beaches in the
Yeah.
Northwoods, from Brandy Lake in the Minocqua area to one of my favorites, Buck Lake at the Almond Recreation area, the beach at Hodag Park. There's great opportunities to jump in a lake in these Northwoods,
Mhm.
and free of charge. So
Yeah.
you got to grab that beach towel and go take a swim.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We do have some really amazing natural amenities up here.
Yeah, and also now having a 6-year-old who's growing every day, uh, it really has invigorated me to share those things that I enjoy with him. And getting outside is one of our favorite things to do. Playing outside, playing in the woods, building a fort, running around with sticks, swimming in a lake, going on a hike, checking out all of the trails in the area are something that we really enjoy, and really cost effective too.
Mhm. Very true. So we've talked a little bit about history. Do you have like a favorite story that you've done, or one of your favorite things that you researched or something like that that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I'm kind of like flipping through the
The
brain Rolodex here,
Rolodex.
and there is a couple of things that stand out. I mean, I really love Hodag history and Hodag heritage. Not enough can be said about it, and it's been being said for a long time.
Mhm.
Um, Hodags are a cultural icon in this community, and there's something that other communities would spend millions of dollars to get. Companies would spend millions of dollars to get 130 years worth of, folklore branding that we just have here.
Mhm.
And I think it's really important. I love the fact that residents past and present refer to themselves, as Hodags. If you're a Rhinelander High School graduate, you're a Hodag. If you've lived here at any time, you're a Hodag. You can come and work and play here and be a Hodag. And then all of the stories surrounding it, the legends surrounding it, the lore is deep and wide,
Mhm.
and it's so much fun.
Mhm.
And seeing it on the water towers. And a couple of years back, I had been chatting with some folks about some of the decals were being changed on city vehicles. And I had to tell them that nowhere else do visitors and tourists take a picture of a city street department truck or a city water truck, because they're just not very exciting. But because ours have Hodags on them, you can go online and look up city street department vehicle, Rhinelander, Wisconsin, and a picture of a Hodag on a truck will come up. And seeing it all over our town, um, it's a really wonderful, playful thing. And I know I'm preaching to the choir with you here,
Yeah.
Lauren, because you
Well,
guys take it.
it is something we've talked about before. I think that there are some people that think that that the Hodag, maybe isn't as big of a deal as it is, or there's a conception that, we need to promote other things other than the Hodag, but it is something that is very unique. It's a differentiating factor for Rhinelander to have something like this. It's like, the Mickey Mouse of Disney World. Like, it's that icon that you go anywhere and you say you're from Rhinelander and someone's going to say, "Oh, the Hodag," or see a Hodag on your shirt. And it's just so intrinsically linked with Rhinelander that it is something that we should be talking about and continuing to care about the tradition of the Hodag story. It's one of the most asked questions we get here. What's that thing outside?
Yeah, of course, at the museum, I love talking about Hodags. I tell the Hodag stories. Everybody wants to know about it that visits.
We also tell every visitor here that they have to go listen to you give this story because Kerry is by far the best Hodag storyteller I've ever heard.
Well said, Lauren. I appreciate that. Yeah, you just have to love Hodags. You will find your life more fulfilling if you lean into it. And that doesn't detract from all of the other amazing, wonderful assets of the Rhinelander and Greater Rhinelander area. There's so much to love about this area. I have mentioned a lot of them: the forest, the lakes, the trees, and that sort of thing. The opportunities for snowmobiling and ATV and UTVing, cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, hiking, biking, resorts, camping. All of these wonderful things can be highlighted.
Yeah.
And this is not just blowing smoke, Lauren, but I think the chamber has been doing a great job lately under your leadership of highlighting all of those things. But to throw the Hodags in the garbage would be a terrible mistake.
Right.
And so you can cover all of those things.
And the
Hodags. Yeah. The history, the legends behind it. It's just fun. And again, there are a lot of communities that struggle to find something that they can utilize in that way. And Rhinelander has it in spades. Rhinelander has 130 plus years of heritage and history about it. And this might be a good opportunity to mention the Hodag Heritage Festival.
Yes, please.
That has been an awesome opportunity to share and highlight Hodag culture within the Rhinelander community, and also to share it with people outside of our area. So there's kind of different aspects of Hodagdom or Hodag culture in that, it's really important to Rhinelander residents and Rhinelander high school graduates and people that live here now, but it's something fun that everybody can enjoy. And even though Rhinelander is the home of the Hodag, people all over the state of Wisconsin can take some ownership of the Hodag history as a folklore icon. And when I go out of the state, a lot of times people do know Rhinelander and Hodags as the connection there. But if I say Wisconsin Hodag, people that enjoy stories about, Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox and other monsters and cryptids they're called around the country, they know Hodags as being related directly to Wisconsin. And that always gives me an opportunity to share the things that I love about Rhinelander. And it's always amazing to me to talk to people out of the state that I then see later in our community that decided to come and check it out.
Yeah.
And it's not because, they want to come see Kerry Bloedorn. It's because they want to come learn more about Hodags and see what it's all about.
Yes, it is a very amazing asset that we have.
Yeah. And I'd say if you come to Rhinelander to work or to live in Rhinelander, you'll find yourself having a better time if you just learn to, love Hodag.
So before we do a couple of fun questions, because we're getting towards the end of our time here, if you're looking ahead to the future, is there something that's like you're really excited about, something that's on the horizon for you that you'd like to share?
Shucks, I just wish there were more hours in the day to do more things. There's just so many opportunities in our Northwoods and in our Rhinelander community. And you just have to look around to see the growth, especially in these last few years. And that's really exciting to me. Certainly, you want to live in a town and live in a community that is growing and is showing signs of progress. And Rhinelander has been doing that since its founding in 1882. It has went from being a last spot in the wilderness here in Northwoods of Wisconsin, to a tent community, to a lumberjack hub, to a sawmill town, to a paper mill town, to a tourist destination that applies all of the benefits of business and pleasure. And to look around and see Rhinelander growing and more people getting interested in moving and living here, and having opportunities to work and live and play, I think is really important. So I really have an optimistic sense of Rhinelander's future, when in so many places around the country, that's just not the case. There are, places that struggle throughout the nation, and I would not count Rhinelander among those. I would say that Rhinelander is on the up and on the upswing, and it's due to so many individuals. When I first was invited to come in and chat with you, Lauren, I was thinking, some of the people that I could mention that inspire me as an individual to be involved in our community, and I just can't name them all. There's so many
Yeah.
people. But if you get out and about and you get involved, you'll get to know them just as well as we have. And it's because of those people that Rhinelander is a great place to live. And I'm so appreciative. I see you. I see you out there working hard, volunteering your time and the efforts that people put in to make Rhinelander a great place. And I really am optimistic that that will continue.
I agree. Okay, I have a few fun questions.
Okay.
What's your favorite historic place in Rhinelander?
Oh, shucks.
Putting you on the spot.
Yeah. I think probably my favorite one is just like a block away from here, the confluence of the Pelican and Wisconsin rivers. It is the whole reason Rhinelander exists here at this location. The Wisconsin River starts up in Lac Vieux des Air. That's the source of the Wisconsin River. And it kind of starts as a small tributary. And then it comes out into this really wide, swampy area that we often refer to as the backwaters of the Wisconsin River, north of Rhinelander. A huge volume of water has to go through this rocky root of an ancient mountain that the paper mill dam is built on. And that water, because it has to go through this narrow passage, gets backed up into an adjacent tributary called Lake Creek. And it formed a small lake there. Native American people called it Fish Lake. And later on, the Brown family built a dam there, which caused the water to go up. And then they used it as a sawmill boomage. And then Boom Lake formed. And all of that wouldn't be possible without the Pelican Rapids, which is just south of where the dam is, and flowing down to the confluence of the Pelican and Wisconsin rivers. And that site there, where the dog park is today, and Friendly Village Nursing Home, and there's a public boat launch there, Pelican Rapids boat launch. That area has been inhabited for thousands of years. And to me, that is incredible. Oftentimes, if I'm standing along the river and the sun is setting, there's just something beautiful and wonderful about it. And to think that I'm not the first or thousandth person to stand there and think that to myself, that's been going on for ages. And since the receding of the last glaciers in this area, that spot has been a camping spot for Native American peoples, indigenous tribes, going back 9,000 years. And it's just really cool to think about. So I think that's probably might be the most important single spot in Rhinelander's history. And because of that, I think it's one of my favorite.
Love it. Okay, you're at the Oneida County Fair. What's your favorite fair food?
Oh, fair food. Shucks. Well, first I got to say that I love coming into Pioneer Park just every day for work at the museum during the summertime. But I especially love it during the fair, because you come in the main entrance of Pioneer Park and you have these beautiful white and red pine trees. It's like a cathedral of pine trees. And you come in on the entry road on Ridge Drive. And as you get closer, you start to hear the sounds of a fair, and you get to hear the live music and the rides and the kids laughing and the families having fun. And then you start to smell the fair food through the trees. and it's got to be cheese curds. We had to actually cap the number of cheese curd vendors we had at the fair. We could have 1,000 cheese curd vendors at the fair,
Mhm.
and I wouldn't necessarily think that was a bad idea, except for that it's a dollar's got to stretch between 1,000 cheese curd vendors is not a lot of money.
Yes.
But usually we have up to 3 cheese curd vendors, and we have 4 days of the fair. So each day I visit each vendor and sample the different cheese curds. But we've really had some wonderful food offerings at the fair, from Asian fusion. Um, Apple fries is something that I tried last year.
Hmm.
There's a vendor that slices up apples into like a French fry, and then they deep fry them and they serve them with like a caramel drizzle dip.
Hmm.
And at first, I wasn't quite sure what to think about it, but I did have some last year, and they were amazing. So, cheese curds, apple fries. I think those are a few of my favorite things. Yeah.
Okay, I have a couple more. If you could go back in time and see Rhinelander in any decade, which would it be?
Oh, I mean, short of having a cloning machine, having a time machine would be the next best bet. And I think about that all the time. I think about what age would I go back and check it out. I think the earliest days, there was a couple of guys that were traipsing around this area in the mid 1800s, John Curran and Martin Lynch, and they both kind of lived different lives. Martin Lynch came down from Canada with a Native American tribe, had married an Ojibwa woman, and they lived just south of Rhinelander on the Wisconsin River, a couple of miles. And he really lived a primitive lifestyle, in essence, with the Native American tribe that he was associated with. And then John Curran was more your traditional European pioneer, where he came to the community and wanted to see a community built up. And if I could come and just spend some time at the confluence of the Pelican and Wisconsin River, and camp out there for a couple of weeks in the mid to late 1800s, I think that's when I would go back and check out. It's one of those funny things. It sounds really romantic, the past at any
Yeah.
rate. But I'm also I love my creature comforts.
Mhm.
So if I think about all of the experiences that I would have going back in time, I think very quickly I would miss indoor plumbing and central air and those luxuries
Mhm.
that sometimes we take for granted because of the age we live in. But to go back in time and just see the very beginnings of Rhinelander as a community would be really cool. Second only to glaciers. I really would love to see some glaciers. A lot of people don't realize that 15,000 years ago, there was a mile thick sheet of ice here, 5,000 feet of ice, straight up into the air, coming down from the Canadian Arctic. And that would have been really cool to see as well.
That is very true. Okay, 2 more questions. One, is there any local story that you think every resident should know?
I mean, Hodags for sure, right? And this kind of gives me an opportunity to mention another story when you asked me what my favorite history story was. And I've done a lot of different topics, a lot of different individuals highlighted their history over the years. But outside of Hodags, the one that really sticks out in my mind is the story of Joe and Nellie Mercedes. Haven't heard of them. It's interesting because the farther you get away from a certain time in history, the less people know about it. And I like finding that sweet spot where the information is fresh enough to gather and to research, but just far enough where people that hear about it go, wow, I've never heard that before. That's incredible.
Mhm.
And there was this couple, Joe and Nellie Mercedes. They were originally from Chicago. And in the 1920s, they developed a vaudeville act where Joe would walk around the audience in a theater and he would take a song request from an audience member, whispered into his ear or written down on a piece of paper. And Nellie, who knew 25,000 songs on the piano, would be sitting on stage at a beautiful grand piano. And Joe from the audience would announce, please play this gentleman's selection. And immediately she would begin to play whatever the request was. And that was their whole show. He would walk around the audience, the entire performance, and people were just in awe, astonished by this telepathic ability that they seemed to showcase. And later in his life, Joe had wrote a book called forced thought transference, which was supposed to explain how they did the act, but in true showmanship fashion, it really never explained
Sure.
anything. But I have done so much research about this couple, and there are countless newspaper articles. They performed for 5 different presidents, kings and queens in Europe. They had a residency in Paris. They made millions of dollars at the time on this very unique act, and nobody ever could explain how they did it. There was a newspaper guy here in town, Jack Corey, who worked for the Rhinelander Daily News, who was friends with the Mercedes, and he had asked Joe and Nellie to do a performance to raise some money for playground equipment here in Rhinelander. So they staged the show at the State Theater downtown, and Joe and Nellie were out of town leading up to this show. And he had talked to Joe on the phone. He's like, "Hey, Joe, tell me what you need to get ready for the show," thinking that behind the scenes there has to be some setup that has to occur for this performance to take place. And Joe said, "Just make sure there's a piano on stage. That's it." They showed up back to Rhinelander about a half an hour before the show. They walked into the theater and performed. And it was just like any other show. People left, jaw dropped over this whole thing.
Mm.
Later on, they had lived at a cottage on Blue Lake, just south of Minocqua. They also owned a property on Lincoln Street here, next to where the old Arby's was. I think it's Redmond Realty now.
Mhm.
And they had also had an office down in Chicago. And one of their last performances they did was at their cottage at Blue Lake. And Jack Corey was there again, being friends of theirs. And at the end of the show, Joe was helping to usher cars out of their tight driveway. And Jack was inside, like lifting up rugs and like checking out the piano and looking for wires or some way to explain this amazing feat that they would showcase. And there was nothing. There was no other explanation that maybe Nellie in particular might have been some sort of mind reader. And those stories are just endless. Again, you can find newspaper article after newspaper article. The sad part is that during a performance in New York, toward the end of their career, Nellie had been involved in an accident on stage that left part of her body maimed. So they retired from show business, and they had previously again bought this cottage up on Blue Lake where they would spend summers away from the limelight. And after she had her accident, they retired there, and then again eventually bought this property in Rhinelander, and they opened an office down on Michigan Avenue in Chicago. And Joe and Nellie started the Northwoods Tourist Bureau. And Joe, single-handedly, with Nellie's help behind the scenes, became kind of an all-encompassing Northwoods Chamber of Commerce director. And he worked on commissions in what we would refer to as the golden era of resorts in the Northwoods, getting people from Chicagoland up to the Northwoods to visit and to vacation. And he took a big map of Wisconsin out and he drew a big red heart around the Northwoods of Wisconsin. And then he drew a big red line down the middle of it, which was on Highway 51. And he called it the Heart of the Lakes region. And it was the Heart of the Lakes Trail. And this was the way he was going to get people to come up north. And he was involved in a publication that was sent all over the country and all over the world, which drew people up to the Northwoods of Wisconsin. And somehow, by developing relationships with business owners and resort owners and other small chambers of commerces in communities like Rhinelander and Minocqua and Boulder Junction and Tomahawk and all of the Northwoods communities, kind of brought them under this umbrella that allowed them to not only showcase their community, but the Northwoods as a whole. What's good for the Northwoods is good for all the individual communities. And oftentimes today, things are a little bit more siloed in that regard, where each community focuses on their part in the Northwoods. I think it's really amazing that he was able to kind of band everybody together to focus on bringing people up to northern Wisconsin, and that it was beneficial to everybody.
Yeah. I've seen stuff here. I mean, I think I gave you something back when you were talking about that article. Like, we've seen that tagline used throughout our history as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just think that their life story is really fascinating. Their love of northern Wisconsin and all the work they did to get people to come up here and visit. and so many people. Gene Shepherd had this thing where he said, we would entice people to come up here with the hodag, but once you get up here, you fall in love with the lakes and the trees and the forests. And, if you don't come up here just a vacation, you might end up coming to live here. And I think that follows suit with Joe Mercedes and his wife Nellie, in that, if you just get people up here, you fall in love with it. And you end up coming up every year. So many people have a tradition of coming up and visiting, and you might just move up here and find a way to spend your life here too.
Which is a very, very common occurrence, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Would you ever consider writing a book?
So it's a funny thing because I've written over 100 scripts for radio and TV programs now. I've written countless articles. I've written a lot of social media blurbs. But I think unless you have a book published, you're not considered an author. So,
I don't think that's true.
Well, I fancy myself a writer,
yes,
but maybe not an author yet. So I do have a lot of materials. I do often think about writing a book of some variety or sorts or another. It's just a matter of taking the time to put a concerted effort toward that with all the other stuff I got going on.
Yeah.
And I also have to be passionate about the thing I'm working on. Always the thing I'm working on is the thing that I'm enjoying. It never feels like an arm twist on my own part. So eventually, I hope that, I'll inspire myself to write something that can be published into a book. And I do have a couple of things in the works, but no definitive deadline to do so. And I'm a really deadline-driven guy. So unless I have a deadline, it might take a while.
So maybe we need to give Kerry a day that he needs to write a book by. Okay, my last question for you. I've really enjoyed, learning more about your background and, your philosophies. And is there just anything else you would like to add or share?
If there was one more little thing I would mention is that in an effort to curate, a positive environment in our community, I had been involved in some Facebook groups that cater to the Northwoods community at large. Vilas County has one and Lincoln County has one, just like a forum, particularly on Facebook where people can go on. Janet at the Dome has Positively Rhinelander, which is an amazing resource just to appreciate and enjoy the images that we see every day in the Northwoods. And kind of piggybacking on that, I wanted to figure out a way that I could bring Oneida County as a community together to talk about things and to have a place for discussion. And so for better or worse, I started an Oneida County community page, and it has been an awesome experience. And sometimes it's challenging. In the world of social media and on the internet, we aren't always putting forward our best selves, but trying to find a way that we can disagree with each other. We can talk about things going on in our communities, but also be respectful of each other is really important. And I really wanted to, again, have a place where people could do that. And I think it's over 8,000 people now, the Oneida County community page. And I think when you read through the rules, you get the sense that, this is a place where I can share my thoughts and concerns, but also keeping in the back of my mind that I got to do it in a way that is caring and considerate of people, especially if I don't agree with them. And so far, majority of everybody that goes on there, I see some of these other community pages that just turn into mass chaos, and that really hasn't happened. Most everybody follows the rules and does a great job at that. And I think it's really important in our community, in society these days, to consider how we talk to people and not just face to face, which that's the easy part. There's a lot of things that people say online that we would never say to each other in person. But then taking that into the online world and knowing that that's how we could and should behave too. Just makes it a better place to live. So it's been neat to run that forum and to admin that forum.
And we thank you for that you're willing to step up and do something like that, because it can be difficult.
A little self-serving in that I like to keep my finger on the pulse of the Oneida County community at large, and that gives me an opportunity to hear, what everyone else has got going on, what people's concerns are, so that I can kind of keep tabs on our community and its health, if you will.
Sure.
I hope if you're listening to this interview, I hope that inspires you to get involved in our community and to recognize how awesome it is to live here, how lucky we are to live here, how blessed we are to live here, and to get out and enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, Kerry, thank you so much for joining me today. I
Thank
really
you,
appreciate
Lauren.
it.
It's always a pleasure to get together with you.
Yeah.
And thanks for all the work you guys do here at the Chamber.
Yeah. We appreciate the partnership we have and that we're able to send visitors down your way every summer. But thank you again. And we will tune in with you all next month on the Real Rhinelander podcast. Have a great day.